So we saw that Hallel is Hashem Kol Goyim, and this is a pasuk in the Hallel. Shabachuhu Kol Ha'umim, the pasuk says further, and then it says Ki Govar Aleinu Chazdoi, because the Eibishter's Chesed has been tremendously strong upon us. Govar Aleinu. And then the pasuk finishes with Ve'emes Havai Alielam Hallelujah. וצריך להבין מהו הנשינס טעם דקי גובה עלינו חסדי דמשום זה הללו את השם כל גויים. The key is a הנשינס טעם. All the goyim should praise the Eibishter because the Eibishter's chesed upon us has been tremendous, and upon us simply seems to be referring to Yidden. So that's what the Rebbe says. Yeah, what sort of a Nasinas time is it? Because the Eibishter was so tremendously goiver chesed upon Yidden, therefore all the goyim should praise him. Yeah, and he says, Ein zeh tam maspik al zeh. That's an interesting lashon. Ein zeh tam maspik. Meaning that maybe it could be a tam, but it doesn't seem to be a tam must peak. In other words, maybe the goy will notice that the Eibishter is very kind to you. He's been very kind to them. And they'll pay attention and they'll say, wow, this is really something. But halaluhu means that they really go out of their kelim in a form of praise to him. Particularly that we see that the pasuk doubles it. There's a kafila saloshan, halaluah Hashem kol goyim, Shabachuhu Kol Ha'umim Ki Govar Aleinu Chazdoi. Well, it's very interesting that Mamish Bezmanenu Zeh, there's a Me'ein Mizo Dova Doimel Zeh Kitzat Bekivan Ha'ofuch. And that is that we see that whenever there's talk about giving away Eretz HaKodesh or their Pu'ulas, taken about Rahman and Islam being Mavater on Eretz HaKodesh to Rotzchim, to gangsters, and to Goyim, even if they were good Goyim, it would be bad enough. And the Americans really put their foot into it and push that Indian, and they get into the most terrible trouble. I mean, there's been a fire over there. Have you heard about it?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't hear the news at all, except what I just pick up from people. And I rely on, most probably on my sharpness of mind to put things together a little too much, because I don't really hear the details sometimes. But there's been a huge, unbelievably massive fire in the west coast of America, which is burnt for several days, absolutely beyond any possibility to put it out. And 1 million people have been homeless. 1 million. I mean, that's a lot of people have been made homeless, and thousands of buildings have been just wiped out in the west coast in California.
Los Angeles?
No.
Yeah.
Just the last few days. It was not this week, but last week.
And Teikaf and Miyad, they should see the reason why. And
And Miyad, to the fact that they start kvetching about, you must give this back, you must give that back, and you must do this, you must do that. And the only person I think is Shon Wolper. I heard that he has tried to make some statement directly to the Nazi Bush himself, saying, listen here, man, you see that you get yourself into endless trouble. Why don't you wake up and start making the connection? That's why I hear he gave out a message. But the amazing thing is that over here, Ein Poitzeper Mitzavtu, Kain Zakon, Afrachat, because they're all, anyway, it's not nice in front of Karen to say things which are not complimentary. But anyway, let's say that that's a form of Inyan Lahefach. Hallelujah Hashem Kol Goyim, Ki Govar Aleinu Chazdoi. It's so great as a chesed of the Eibishter to Yidden that give a call what you guys get yourself into. I don't know, that's going to bring them immediately to Hallelujah Hashem Kol Goyim. But anyway, it's mi'enta. So therefore, Go Aleinu Chazdei is the Pirush B'Golui. There'll be a tremendous is gabrus of chesed on Yidden. So therefore the Rebbe said that's not enough time why all the goyim should mamish be misoyer l'mayla mikol keileihem l'shabeach l'foyer l'halal as the in from Elikut. And so therefore he says ein shetam maspik al zeh. I think there should be one. No, I took the one from up there. But there was another one up there, an old one. It's not there.
Yeah, that's one
That's one you got. Yeah, unfortunately, I do have an iron base in my my room, but I didn't bring it. What's that? Is that an iron base over there?
No, this is a Chumash.
All right. Here's a Sator Chumash. Mahu inyan hahilul v'ashivach shelehem. What is the inyan of their praise and their going out in the form of hilul on the part of the goyim? Gam tzarich lovin mahu shebechag haSukkos yikrivu ayin porim neged ayin shorim. That's an abbreviation. Referring to the mokia of the goyim lamayla the ayin shorim. Mahu inyan hakrova zais. ומפני מה בחג הסוכות דווקא? Why was it דווקא בחג הסוכות? So when I get to the main kasha, why is it that ki gover aleinu chasdei, that should be an asinas tam of Hallelujah Hashem kol goyim? It's interesting that that Rashi immediately, if you look out there in the posik, Rashi immediately notices that, and he immediately warns the Shaila. Rashi says kaloima. Now it's very rare. Well, it's not rare, but it's not on every passage does Rashi say kaloima. It's all in Shas the same meaning. The way Rashi says kaloima, then he's warning you a kasha which he expects that has obviously occurred to you. And when he says kaloima, he's like correcting you the kasha. That's an old klal in Shas. And so it's the same in the Nach. About in the Chumash, I don't know so much because it's rather rare that he says kaloima in the Chumash. But over there on this pasuk, where it's written ki gover aleinu chasdei, Rashi says kaloima, af ki gover aleinu chasdei yahalelu. Understand that? So Rashi's warned it. And he says that even though the chesed of these gavrus chesed is to Yidden, nonetheless the goyim will also praise him. In other words, that there'll be a tremendous praise, even though they're not getting the chesed. The Yidden are getting the chesed. They will praise. So Rashi's felt the kasha. I mean, he hasn't answered the kasha, but tuichen apnimi lama zeh, what sort of chesed would cause as a'inim by the goyim. But at least he's put it right. And he says, even though that chesed is already Yidden, nonetheless it'll call out a shevach by the goyim. So it's very interesting to notice that Rashi immediately on the spot. But there's a very fascinating Radak over there. And the interesting thing is that this is a kapitel in Tilim, which is only two psukim. Kapitel Kuf Yud Zayin. And it's just those two psukim. Hallelujah Hashem kol goyim shabchu kol ha'umim ki gover aleinu chasdei ve'emes Hashem lo'yolam hallelujah. That's the whole kapitel. That's the answer. So the Dax is over there that it's referring to the time of the Geula. It's referring to the time of the Geulus Mashiach, Bias Melech HaMashiach. So that's what Lashon. And he says that then will be Hallelujah Hashem Kol Goyim Ki Gover Aleinu Chasdei. Because there'll be the Inif and the Geula to Yidden, that will call, and it'll be in such a pirsum, in such a Ishkabrus, a Gili Elikus, with the Shepikol, the Sinyan HaChesed. And therefore the Goyim will all go out of their Kelim and they'll all be this. And he says, Ki V'emes Havai Ki Gover Aleinu Chasdei. And he says, V'emes Havai Li'olam, that then everybody will see that they have tocha, what the Eibishter made, that he would take Yidden out of the Golas, has in effect become true. As they state that, in other words, that the Eibishter made that out tocha hundreds, thousands of years ago. He promised that there would be this Inyan, It took a long time. It was like almost an Eibikizach. Obviously, the emes of the Eibishter holds out, and there's in effect being the union of the Gula. See, he stayed taught in the Radak. He learns of Mamish Mufurish, and if I'm not mistaken, he says Shnei Psuki Meile Medavrim Iskalis Mashiachenu. He stayed taught. Pele. So in that general theme, and Beyachadim is the well-known cloud that the iron porim that were offered in the Musafim of Sukkot, they add up to 70. It's one on the first day 13, the second day 12, and so all of them together add up to iron porim that they connected the iron shivim umas. And here it's interesting. The Rebbe says that they connect the iron sorim. He uses the Rosh Hashanah iron sorim in pastas. What that refers to the mocha of the goyim, not so much the goyim how they are mamish lamata. And it's brought down in the Medrash a whole inyan that the goyim that they if they would have known what those iron porim did for them, how much it was mamshik to them, shefa, then they would have put legiones shel chayil, legions of army around the Beis Hamikdash to protect it, and they would never have dreamt of destroying it. If they would have only known what the iron porim in Sukkot did for them. They stayed out in the Medrash. What is the union of this akrova of the iron porim, and what's it got to do with the shurish of the goyim, the iron sorim, and what's it got to do with Chag HaSukkos Davki? Why was that akrova Davki b'Sukkos?
And what's it got to do with the posuk?
Huh?
What's it got to do with the posuk?
Well, you see, this posuk Hallelujah Hashem Kol Goyim Ki Gova Aleinu. I see what's got to do Davki with this posuk. Well, the Maimon was said on Chol HaMoed Sukkot. In other words, Hallel is said not only on Pesach, it's also said on Shavuos, also on Sukkot. If I made it, there's a posik in the Hallel which is said on Sukkot. So that was it. Since the Klolos Hallel is Nagea to Goyim, yeah, it's Nagea to Goyim, and on the contrary, the pashtus of the pasuk is that the goyim will do the praising. So therefore the Rebbe said that on Chag HaSukkos there was a special hamshocha to goyim. In other words, since the whole Hallel is their inyan, therefore he happens to mention, when I say the whole Hallel, that particular inyan Godel in the Hallel. Therefore he brings it on Chag HaSukkos. There was a special inyan of that Shevach V'Hilu to goyim. ולהבין זה צריך להקדים תחילה מה שנסבור ליהו שיש בייס מדרגס בחוכמס תימוה. We saw that there were two inyanim in Klolos Moiches Timoa or Chochmas Timoa, and they were connected with what we saw. That there was one inyan in Chochmas Timoa which was, and that's what we're going to talk more about. It was shot to Cyrus, to Amshocha B'Derech Cyrus. And then there was an Inyan Pnimi V'Atzmi in Moiches Timoa that it was Mamish Pnimisatik. It was Shedavki Boy Mislabish Pnimius Atik, but that was mashma that it was Mudal and Mufrash Liatzmi. So we saw that those two Bechinas in Moiches Timoa, that they were the Inyan of in Chochmas Timoa, there were Chitenius and Pnimius. Who inyan Machiv Doer Yoshua, Machiv Doer Choiza. We saw that Machiv Doer Yoshua is also an inyan from Stima, it's an inyan from Machiv, but it was only Sosum Rach Legabi HaMakablim. Ach, Ubchina Shaychus Lehem. And Shaychus Lehem means that Sof Kosof, it'll be Miskaret to them. And not only just a Ha'ora, but it'll be Miskaret to them B'Shleimusi, B'Melueh. And we saw that was the whole union of Achrei Abo and Shnin, the Kohen Minish, V'chulo. Even though betchilas hashpor and mitzad Rav, how he's mishachas to the Talmud betchila, then it's a inyan from sosul, stimulus. But it's a stimulus asuya lehiposach. It goes after a while in such a way that the Mekablim are able to be misale and misdachik in a way that they can become kelim and they become shaychus to the Hamshocha. And that's what we saw was called Makiv De'er Yoshua. Makiv De'er Choizer Hu Shososum Be'etzem Va'ena B'china Shaychus Ela Mekablim Klal. Because we saw that was a Makiv. The Retinium was Aliyah Viskalalis in the Mashpia himself, not even your reader to the Mekablim, nor such inyonim that were in a even of the Veikis and Aliyah Tomid in the Mashpia himself, and the Heipach inyan Hagiloi. But that's we saw the Yoera Atzmi Hats Mamish Kol in the Etzem, the Etzem Yoera Hats Mamish Kol in the Etzem. And we saw that the only way that can possibly be nimshak im beklal it is alidei hamshocha atzmias, that the atzmis himself causes it to go forth from him, because bedachei or beklale hamshocha it can't possibly be nimshak. It's completely beyond any union of gili to the makabel. So if it does come, then it's in an even from maton and matan baseisa. We compare it to the union of the pasuk matan baseisa. And that was the makiv of Choizer, which even when he gives it, in the end, it's not mamish b'shaychus ela mekablim. No, this is a chesed elim mitzad the mashpir that he decides to give it. Or we saw benagir to Tishrei, and particularly to this Hamshocha, how it was mitzad the schracha the sukkah. We saw it can come mitzad tshuva miyom keder, the liba, which is also a aveda in the autumn, which is lagamri shaloiba. And we discussed it at some length in the last shir. V'al pia now, Yuvan Mashin is Burli Yu Perek Reish Daled, Da Isav V'sachot, well that's the beginning of the last Maimah, the first Perek in the last Maimah. Da Isav V'sachokma Mibchinas Chokmas Timoa, Hu Mibchinas Cyrus Levod. V'hu Inyan, Da Abo Yoinet Mimazlo. That's one on the Lashon brought down in the Zohar, mover in many drushim, that Abba Chochma is yonek, a inifan yanike. It's not a inifan hamshocha bederach ishtaushel mamish, not bederach ileva olo. No, it's a inifan yanike, meaning a nurturement or a taking of the hashpah, but not bederach mashpia mekabel in the usual way. So therefore, the inyan of the Hamshocha of Chochma from Chochmas Timur has to be even of Cyrus. And we saw that the inyan from Cyrus, their inyan is Helem v'Tzimtzum. But in Cyrus Gufa there are two Oifanim. That there's the Chitzonius of the Cyrus, and there Cyrus to the inyan of Al Chochmas Timur is Takia Amokia to Chochma, but that's the union of Chitzonius, I guess, Arich, in other words, Chitzonius Chochmas Timur. That's the union of the Cyrus, how the each hair is like a cholol al pi Kabbalah, and it'll become mashma further in the Hemshech Habiyah, that each sayal is like a, how do you call it, like a bamboo reed. It's a hollow. So the chitzonius of that is a thing which is mitzamtzim or magbil. But the pneumius is a which is kaviyachol open. So in that open part of the pneumius, they can go in atzmi. The atzmius can go. So Kumtei said, mitzad the pneumius is a certain symptom of ashpoer, like the chutz, like the mekablim. But hidden in that symptom is the chesed atzmi. But that symptom just makes like a hollow through which the atzmi can go. which means that on the one hand there's a certain Tzimtzum Chitzoni, which is shot to a form of Ishtalshalos, what that's Abba Yonik Memazlo, and then there's a Pnimius, which is Mamish Amshochas Ha'etzem. And so, like Abi the Etzem, all that Tzimtzum, the Chitzonius is done, it's just made like a pathway through which you can go. And that's what we call Mavar, or Mavir, Amshocha B'dor Mavir. And that's what we're going to see as we go along. So we'll talk more about that as we go along. And this type of Ma'avir is called a Tzimtzum Pnimi, or Tzimtzum Ha'atzmi, where the Atzmi himself just goes through like the of a funnel. If you got water here and you got water, you want it to go into a keli, a smaller keli, you pour it through the funnel. So the same water that was over there goes over here. It just goes, through the funnel, but it's not affected by the funnel at all. It just goes through the funnel.
It's not real Tzimtzum.
So the sideways.
It's not really a Tzimtzum.
Oh yes, it is. Because if you try to pour the water in to that thin place without your thing, then you pour all over the place. If you ever been stuck on the road with your car and you try and pour the petrol, well, it's not going to. It'll just go all. No, it doesn't carry out the tachlis. Not just gets mishpazer, even bilti rotzu. The same would happen if not the sayra. The same happens with a funnel. The funnel allows you to go exactly where you want to go, but with the etcher, and that's a chiddush of it. It's a tzimtzum, but it's a tzimtzum for the hoivah of the etcher. And so there's two inyanim in the sayra. So we'll see as we go along. But we're talking here that Abba Yonik Memazlo, the Gila of Chochmah. The Gila of Chochmah from the Mazel of a Noitzer, in this inyan we're talking here, is the Chitonius Ador. That's Gila like a Tzimtzum, which allows the inyan from Chochmah to go over, but that's the Tzimtzum of Chitoni, that's Gila Tzimtzum, which is Nimshach derech the Etzem Chitonius of the Saya itself. And that brings the Shefa from Chochmah Stimor, mitzad Chitzoni Yusoi, into Chochmah. And that's called the inyan from Mazel V'noitzer. Now it's interesting, I must admit that I have to just be more of this little point, is it's interesting that in this whole area where we've met up with it a few times already, this inyan at the Mazel, at the Tikkun Hazayin, which is called in the Yud Gimel Tchuni Dikna, which is called Noitzer. The Rebbe calls it always with a vav here in this whole piece here, in this Kansa Hemshech. He calls it Mazel V'noitzer, but it's not written in the posik with a vav. State nishmet. It's Noitzer Chesed, lalav. State nishmet kavol. It's an interesting thing. I looked it up in some of the Mukubalim. They all call it Mazel Noitzer Chesed. They call it Mazel Noitzer Chesed. And the Rebbe calls it here Mazel V'noitzer with a vav. So it's interesting why he does that. Why doesn't he just call it Noitzer without a vav, or call it Noitzer Chesed? Because that's the full terminology for that particular tikkun is Noitzer Chesed. So that's the way they call it. They call it Noitzer Chesed. And the Rebbe calls it here V'noitzer. In other words, maybe he calls it V'noitzer metavov to be maramas that there are other inyonim in it. It's kilo koilim in itself. Inyonim atzmim, which are l'mayla from what a mazel really is. There we call it V'noitzer. That's what I can think of. But the Hefshem, if he push it Mechoisa Azman, I couldn't sort of really go into it. It's not really Nagia. Kol kach to the Etzem Hemshech at the beer here, but it's interesting. It's Milsa Hizu. When he's Boer Hakushi out there, and we asked the Kash on that, over there at the beginning of the Maimah of Sukkot, Sharei B'mazel V'noitzer, it occurs the whole way through, all the way through this whole passage. He calls it Mazel V'noitzer. Yeah. Meir, well, I say remember that it's in the middle of it's not the first, and it's not the last. It's like in a Hemshech. You have another one. We saw that Mazel V'noitzer had in itself also these two nuances, just like its Mokir Atzmi, which is Moichas Timur, has. In other words, that in the Mazel itself, there's an inyan of Shemen HaToiv, and that Shemen HaToiv, like it's written in the Pasuk, Shemen HaToiv al Aroish, Yored al Zokan, Zakan Aroin, with the Zokan Adin inside it. Yeah. There's in the inyan of that Mazel V'Naitzer, b'tzad Pnimiyusay, there's Shemen HaToiv, Datika. We saw that in Chokmas Timor, and not only in Chokmas Timor Atzmoi, but how he's nimshach into his sire already, how he's nimshach into his what you might call his tzinoer, through which he becomes nimshach. Now in the tzinoer gufa we find the two inyonim. We find that there's a inyon from Atik, v'lochein ha'yud gimel tkuni dikno. What they are, the Yud Gimel Midas Arachmim, Hein Mokia Slicha. What the inyan from Slicha is a inyan Lamaila Mikol Medida Vakbora. This is Atik, was lay smaller Bahaya Tika, and therefore since lay smaller, it's only the inyan from Pshitas HaToiv, Pshitas Arachamim, more than Toiv, no Rachamim. Therefore it's inyan from Slicha. Once you reach that Madrega, then all the Pagamim and all the Inyonim are not only not Toifus Mokim, but they reach the Tikkun Ali, they say. So, as him came, and Bechlal, the Yud Gimel Midas Arachmim, are Bechlal, Inyonim is the Inyan of Slicha. So, if that's the case, that in the Tzina of Chochmas Timor, there's already the Gilui of Atzmis Chochmas Timor, which is Atik, then Eichu B'Bchinas Moki LeChochma. And yet, on the other hand, we say that the Chochmas Timor, being as it is already Chochma Da'arich, yeah, then it's already Kilu Chochma Had Shait Chitzenis Akesa, then it's already a Moki for Chochma Da'atzilas. And when we say Mokia, we're going to correct that slightly. Well, we've already corrected it. We've already said it's Derech Cyrus. And Cyrus is not the usual way of a Mokia, but nonetheless, it's what we're going to call a Mokia. We'll see as we go on, we're going to justify that we call it a Mokia. It follows that Chochmas Timor is a Mokia b'derech, what we're going to call, say, the Hishtauselas, even though it's Lamaila K'tzas mi Hishtauselas, to the Inyan from Chochma is an Atzilas, and Chochma is already a Sphira Gluya, and it's one of the Esakoiches if we take the Moshel in the Refesh. So how can Pnimius Chochmas Timor, well, it's Inyan is Shemen HaToiv, well, that's the Inyan from Pnimius. Yeah, Ha-Kesa Mamish, as if Shemen Inyon is that it's tough. Lamaila al Gabi Hamayim, well, that's the Moki of all the Inyon is Slicha, V'churu Rachamim Mamish, how can that be a Moki to Chochma? In other words, we seem to be playing on all sorts of different chasanas and different inyonim with this inyan from Chochmas Timor. Va'inyan hu, said the Rebbe. Dehine haramaz parashaboy daf mem omet beis kosav devar mazel v'noitzer yesh boy pnimis v'chitoyniyah. Now it's actually quite a short piece in the Ramaz. But over there it's talking about the inyan from Yitzir, boy deals big of Yitzir's Mitzrayim. There's a whole mufladik passage in the Zohar about the inyan from Chometz, and about how Chometz is Ma'aki of the inyan from Isgalas, from Geula, and Daki from Geula is Bittel Kol HaChometz, and Bittel Klippus Pare, and then there was the inyan. So it's very fascinating. It's interesting, just like we saw, then again to what the Dak brings over there. But Posik said, well, that piece in the Ramaz is talking about Moshiach. That piece in the Ramaz is talking about Moshiach. And he says, Alaf, the Giluim Ha'atzumim that there were, the Yitzir's Mitzrayim, he said that was all the inyan from Arich, it was all the inyan from the Giluim, how they Klulim, Amnam be'ein seif l'mayla mi'a asfiras, or how it's got some sort of shaykhs to say the shtausas. So it's up to the Judge Shalamayla, who say the shtausas. He said, Leosid, Moshiach, he's going to be Mamish Pnimis Ati, come over in the Kisvei Arizah, whatever. And he says that's the inyan from Pnimis Chochmas Timor. And he says, and he brings Chochmas Timor. He says, Yedua shebepnimius Chochmas Timor, Pnimius Atik, v'zu madregas HaMashiach, she'ol of Nema, nochal of, this and this. And he says, that's the Inen, what Mashiach will be zecher to the Inen from Yechida HaKlali is, or that Inen how in Chochmas Timor is Shoire and Biskala, the Inen from Atik, or is it Inen from Yechida HaKlali is. As I said, and he said, "V'zui madregas melech Mashiach." I say, state there. You find it many places in Iron Base. The whole of Iron Base is somehow or another it's working towards this. I once, ich habe somehow gesagt, a few people asked me when I say asked me my opinion. I once said to some guys at the base Mashiach, they were during my interview and the whole thing. I said, if you take a careful look in the Iron Base, you'll see that most of the Inyonim in Iron Base are like a sort of Navua, klapi the Inyonim how they're going to be liyosi. Even though at certain points you may not notice it so clearly, but if you look carefully into the Inyonim, you'll see it's all working in that direction. And we saw in the last part about the Inyonim, Ben Dovid, Boaz, Hes Chadaz, and everywhere you'll find it. B'kol HaMakims. You find that somehow or another it sort of links up with the and this whole Inyan Hallelujah Hashem Kol Goyim.
And the rest of Hasidus doesn't talk about
Mashiach
all the time.
I agree with you. Yeah, but left after everywhere you look up you find about Mashiach. There's a lot of Inyanim. I agree with you. What you say is right. I mean the whole Inyan thing, the Gila is the Gila from Mashiach. Ein Achanami. Aber Va'ininu, the Hine Haramaz Pasha Boy Daf Mem Omed Beis Kosa the Mazel Vanoita. He doesn't write Mazel Vanoita Metavov. I looked it up carefully. He writes the Mazel Noitzer Chesed, as they say to the Metavov. It's interesting. Yesh Boy Pnimis V'chitzaynias or B'teich Pnimiusay Hu Pnimis Atik, as they say to. And he said that's the Hine for Nochal, that's the Hine for Melech HaMashiach. Well, now, so that's a kasha. As if Chochmas Timor is really Pnimis Atik, and that's the Madrega Pnimius of Chochmas Timor. Then how can it be a mochi for Chochma how it already is in Atzilus? But in Atzilus, it's already a koyach, a sphera mugbelis, with the Indian from Chochma Gluya. With all the inyonim of what Chochma is, and not bina, and not oid inyonim, but not pnimis atik. Pnimis atik, mamish, like you said, gile haslicha, what a slicha is lamayla mikol. Hakoich is vasfira is lamayla mikol medida v'agbola. So how can that be? So we didn't really answer the teretz yet. We just sort of went around with a whole beer. Yeah, the in Chochmas Timor, these two madregas. So that's going to help us out now to make the chilik. Ulafi Hanal, in the light of all that we said after having asked that kasha, Yesh Loima de Beklolos Mazel V'Noitzer, meaning Noitzer Chesed, V'chein Kol HaYud Gimel Tkuni Dikno, all of the Yud Gimel is Rachmim, Hein Mipchinas Chochmas Timor, Emes, he said not only Mazel Noitzer, no, all of the Yud Gimel is Rachmim, all of them are from Chochmas Timor, because they Nochanami in Chochmas Timor is Mislabeish Atik, Mamish Atik, how is Pnimis Akesa, Rak, Sheyesh Bozeh Pnimis V'chitainiyas. In Chochmas Timor Gufa, there are the Indian from Pnimis V'chitainiyas, and the Pnimis V'chitainiyas are not Stam Pnimis V'chitainiyas. This is Mamish in Madregas Makifim, and Madregas Makifim how they shot to the Mashpia, to the Etzemin and Alakus Arts Mudal. But in that Gufa we found two Hanim Shocho, Nimshochim mi base Amadregas Shebechochma Stimos in his Baru Lil. In other words, we just spoke about the Makif of the Yosha. Makif mitzad the Mashpia, how he's got a shaykhs to the Makablim, and the Makif of El Choiza. In other words, those two Makifim in Chochmas Timor, they are the two inyonim, and we're going to have to be machalik beinayim b'negeh to the kushia. In other words, enoch hanami, the moki of Ashurish, how Chochmas Timor is a moki of Ashurish to Chochma Datzilus, the Chochma Gluya is through the union of the Machif to Yoshua. In other words, how Chochmas Timor, despite the fact that she's Mudal, she does have a shaykhs to the Mekablim, and eventually they can somehow or another be shayat to that shefa. Or that's the way that Chochmas Timor is a mokeh, albeit not a normal mokeh in inverted commas. It's through Cyrus, as we're soon going to see. Or so-called it's a union for Nishtaushlas. Or that's the union of how Chochmas Timor is a mokeh to Chochma Gluya. But the other union in Chochmas Timor, that it's in is mamish pnimi satik, or the union of the Gilui Deliosid, v'chulu, kemuvah dort in the Ramaz, or that's the other madrega. That's a madrega ha-beis. The chitzeni is the mazel v'naitzer, who mipchinas chitzeni is Chochmas Timor, she mipchinas moki la-Chochma. Or the chitzeni is of that, even in the tzinoya itself, but that's mazel. V'naitzer or mazel naitzer, how we will call it. Who mipchinas chitzeni is Chochmas Timor, she mipchinas moki la-Chochma. Dahainu, or that makif, albeit it's a makif. But it's a makif of Voyor Yoshua, which eventually becomes mizkala to the makabel. In other words, through the union from Cyrus there can be a makabel, and that's union from Chochma Datzilus, or Chochma, how it is in Nefesh. Ubchinas ha-pnimius de mazel v'noitzer, hu shenimshum ubchinas pnimius de Chochmas Timor, shesosum bi'etzem k'moi atzmias atik. In other words, we're not talking stam about atik, but we're talking about atzmias atik. But that's also l'chera diktuk. L'chera yesh b'seh inyan mesuyam. What he says, it's not just stam atik, but it's atzmias atik. That's the union of the Erasosum bi'etzem from the Mekablim. Or mishom nimshach gam kein moichin, el shahem moichin gevoihim v'nailim biyoisa. Now, when we say moichin, we mean already a hashpoah, which is shayat to Mekablim. Ela, we're going to see that, like we saw, that the oifen, that can be nimshach, dafki alidei nosina, matan b'seisa. So therefore the Rebbe says that if that is nimshach, it can be nimshach in a way that it can eventually come into the Seder, what we call Ishtaushelas, and those daragis which are in the Seder of Ishtaushelas, they'll be able to be makabelit, it'll be nimshach lafi kilo Seder shalahem, but really it'll be lagamri shaloi lafi Seder shalahem. It'll really be a nasina atzmiyas shalamayla mi kol medida v'hagbola. But that lechora is once again a remez to liosid, because that's what's going to be liosid. That the atzmius of atik will be nimshach tafki b'apnimin. In other words, ultimately speaking, all of the great makifim in Yonah Mesokos Oflehi Moshe derech apnimiyas. So we can say that Chochmas Timor, Moichas Timor is like the Nakuda atzmius for which all of these inyonim are going to, one way or another, be mizkala and mishtausel, to use the word mishtausel liyosi. There's going to have to be some point where all the inyonim atzmim are going to have to be nimsha b'der pnimiyah. So the Rebbe says kwa yesh dorok, but it's not ishtauselas, and yet it's going to be derech ishtauselas, and it's even l'mayla from the mokia of the rotzen, but chila klolos habriya. It's a new type of in, like we saw chodosh, but it's going to be dafki in the seder of the Inyan HaIshtaushelas. That's like how do you call it, a prelude. That's like a forespace of what we're going to see here. So once again, we seem to be hitting on something very atzmistic here. We're saying that Moichas Timor, to quote its Kabbalistic name, it's like a Nakuda Merkozis for atzmias in the whole, what you might call, amazing trick which is going to occur when there's going to be the Nasina of the atzmias. And then that Nasina is going to be Davki B'Opnimi. And it's going to Davki come the Mekablim. How's that shayach? Ki kvar yesh davar kazeh. It's already working to a certain extent, even without the Gilu of Mashiach. It's working in what you might call in a hidden way, mamish b'goloi, in the inyan of this whole Hamshocha through Pnimius, Moicha Stimua. As we call it Moicha, Moicha Stimua. It's gonna somehow or another bring everything into Ishtalshalas in a way that it's called Moichin. Yes, Nimshach Meprinas Moichin, it's Nimshach Moichin, El Sheim Moichim Gevoim V'Nailim B'Yoisa. In other words, that the Ashpaz, Liosid, are going to be in such a way that they will be to the Mekablim, but even like the Rambam says, Shelo Ya'ishik Kol Ha'olam, Kule Ela Lo Das Boirom. In other words, it's not that you're not going to be able to, you're going to be busy, Liosid. How do you say? You're going to have what to keep you occupied. Even though you're not going to be running around after the few bucks, and so on and so forth. But you're going to be busy and occupied. Yeah, with the inyanim which are shayach to you, they're going to come into your seder. What that's in you for moichin. They're going to be moichin gevoyim v'nailim b'yois, completely and utterly beyond the whole normal seder. That's what he said here. The Atzmius Atik. That was mashma that maybe even in the other seder there's also a little bit of Atik, but not Atzmius Atik. Even though we said that the other seder is only siders, but that's lachera ainin for the chitzonius. Well, that's also a remes that in all of these inyonim, which are bederach, l'mayla mi seder shtalsus kitzas, actually, there's always a certain trace at a pnimius for him, and that's what you remember we had in not the last year, but the year before that. Yeah, we had that he brought down with us the political loss. You remember we had been again to the Kav. We said that the Kav is nimshel lechad from the Kav is a Kav kotza, Kav it's in from Mugbal, it's already the Yohad Shat Bola, so the Rebbe said emes of it is nimshel in the Kav mioer shenisalem. And that's not the pnimis of the Kav, that's the chitzenis of the Kav. It's in the Kav, kamoishu, that's what you might call a functioning entity, or that what the Kav does in inverted commas, its normal task. Is in them, there's always a trace of the Ursh in the Salim. So we could say that even in this whole Inyan where Yosha, even in the Seder which is Shaiti Stalshalas, even though we're saying that that's not Atik, that's only Dina van Arich, and that's only the Chitzenius of the Saira. But nonetheless, in them good, there's always a certain episode also from the Ha'inarech, also gets Nimshach, which means that there's always a certain Nasinas Koyach in any Amshocha which comes B'derech Amitius, B'derech HaKavod Amitius, which carries in itself a certain trace of the Pnimius Hanishor, which is not Nimshach, and therefore he's medactic that it says Shesosah Be'et. Excuse me, but that's going to be Nimshach, and what's going to be Nimshach? Atzmius Atik, not just Tamat, Atzmius. And much more, in the other way, there's also a certain trace of Atik, of a Nishmamish Atzmius. Those are the Inifan. So, Olai Yeshlem, it's hard to know the Dukya Alashenis and everything. So, Olai Yeshlem, B'derech Hevshem, I cannot say so. Al-Chaponim, there's a Sikha and the Kavona. Klal is bederach zu. Va'inenu. So the Rebbe said, Va'inenu, and we're going to go now. Im Kain. So we got that's the territory. We got two madrigas. Chochmas Timoa, Mitzad Amachif Doer Yoshua Shuboy. Then he's a machit to Chochma. Albeit it's derech Cyrus, but it's already a machit leChochma. Ve'ilu. That what the Ramaz says that the Ini of Chochmas to Mamish Pnimis Atik. She's Galileosid. Others. Machiv Doerchois, that's the immediate. Mashpir how he is in Chochmas Timor Mitzarat. Va'inyan Yuvan al pi mashkosu b'moki macher. We're going to see that both of them so are really shy to Pnimi, that they're really shy to be miskaler to the Mekabel. Va'inyan Yuvan al pi mashkosu b'moki macher sheyesh b'chinas hamshocha shebasei di shtalsheles v'yesh hamshocha haboa Mimokim Gavoya Meyoid comes to a very, very high madrega. L'mayla miseda ha'ishtaushel v'ha'kel hu p'chinas pnimi. And nonetheless, yeah, it's also a pnimi. In other words, not a makif. In other words, we're dealing now with the Zolcha Inyonim, what we might say that makifim is not our deal. Makifim is not our Indian here. Now, we're dealing with the shroshim called kakavoyim, she bichelton. Maybe we could say it that way. Mitzad the tremendous mila that they have is Inyonim atzmiyim, and there's so much shy to atzmiyusai. Ki atzmiyus atik das ist doch mamisch bechina taktoine shebamazel. Das ist doch mamisch der Eibishter himself, Kaviochel. Amamira, dort where he is, dort is pnimis kavanosai. That's the yemas kavana. Was your villa? Mahu roteh. Amamira, we could say that in that madrege was his emes atzmiyus atik. It dort herzig. What's the ultimate kavana? What's the ultimate purpose? And the ultimate purpose that everything has to be given, but derech pnimi. And afar, there's a ina which l'mayla legamri misay de ishtaushelas mitzad shorshoi, but he's also going to be nimshach derech ishtaushelas. Amir, that's the difference. The chokhmah stimur, how he's a mocked to chokhmah gluya, is a form of ishtaushelas. He's going to have to correct it slightly, but he's going to say it's a form of ishtaushelas. And for ilu, yeah, chokhmah stimur, how he is mitzad atzmiyus atik. But it's l'mayla mi-ishtaushelas, it's legamri, mitzad shorshoi. Mitzad the oil be'etzim, there's a gavoya me'oid, on afu p'kein, that's going to come davkir. Yeah, but even shel p'nim, it's going to be nimshach to the mekablim, and therefore use the expression moichin. And it's going to be moichin, gavoyim, nailim b'yoysa. Very, very high and very elevated b'yoysa. He said that means to say that the Seder Vadroga of Seder Ishtauscheles, whom ya Chochma da Atzilut, Ishtauscheles Mamish, the begins with Chochma. That's one on. Reishis Ishtauscheles is Chochma. Yeah, Chochma da Atzilut. Lebina, Mebina Lazor, yeah, from Bina into Zor, and all of that is Bederach Ilava. Ilava Olo, in other words, Mamish Aseda Masuda of Ishtaushelas. So the Chitanias, the Penimis Sheba Elyain becomes Amokia Latarte. Rather, I'm sorry, the other way. Chitanias Sheba Elyain becomes Penimis Latarte. But the whole Klodim that we haven't been to get to Ilava Olo. For who Inyan Ishtaushelas Hasfira is Besfira Atzma. If you're familiar with that expression, occurs in Tanya over there in the Yuva Chayochad in Simon in Geras HaKodesh, the famous chapter 20. But over there he begins by saying that you got what he calls the Inyan from Shtaushel, Sasfirais, Besfirais Atzmon. In other words, that they're Mishtaushel, one from the other. But the Sfirais, excepting for the Inyan from Malchus. Malchus, sorry, not, he's Maramas over there. That Malchus is not Mamishain from Ishtauscheles, but we'll see that Gabi Klolis are moving from Ishtauscheles compared to Lamayla Ishtauscheles, then maybe even that can be described as Ishtauscheles. So he says, Ruin in Ishtauscheles Asfira Besfiras Atzmon, Shaheim Bebchinas Ilava Olam. Now the truth is, he's soon going to say that in that itself, there are two Ifanim and Ilava Olam. We'll soon see about that in a second. We've already learned that earlier in the Hebshah. Agam, where are we? Vagam, he said, Masha Chochma. Oh, so okay. So I mean, we could say that's brought down here Bekitza because this is moving and mavur. Dai tzorcha, as you might say, behabe mekemes. That Chochma and Bina Ileval and Bina and Midas Ileval and in the Midas Guva Ileval. Even though you can always tell that they're not mamish iliva, but yet they are. It depends, which angle you look at it. And our Indian here, how each one is mashpia to the other, then it's enough for that to call it iliva olu, meaning that it's an Indian how each one has got an erech or kiruva to the other, and that's what we call ishtalshus. So now says the Rebbe, well, that all makes sense in the Sfiras Atzmon. Dainu, that's the bitu, that's the diacholoshim, Sfiras b'Sfiras Atzmon. But what about Keser me? What about Chochma mi Keser? So, emes mitzad chitzonius ha'inyonim, then Keser is also a Sfira, the famous diuk bezeh. That sometimes Keser is nimnim, sometimes Keser inanim. So the beer is that mitzad chitzonius Sfiras, and Keser, Dainu Arich, is one of the, it's Reish HaNetzolim, it's one of the Sfiras. Mitzad Pnimius Ayin, and then Atik is moved up. And then we said the Keser is not one of the Eser Sfiras. The diuk is that Kabbalas HaChochma mi Keser is here Ayin Shal Ishtalshus, because we're saying, we're talking here Mitzad Chitzonius Advarim Ayin Kol Ishtalshus. And that's the diuk, and like it's a sort of a sub-kashit b'toich ha'inyan that l'chera Chochma gets from Keser derech Cyrus. And here we come to the whole idea of Cyrus, that we're going to see they can have in themselves a from the Chitzonius, and then ultimately they can have in themselves a from Pnimius, God. So he says, "Ay l'chera masha Chochma mekabelas mi'akeser gam kein nikosei d'ishtalshus," and that's kiru b'tmiyah. That's kiru b'tmiyah mesuyemes. And that's what he says. Agam de Kabbalas HaChochma mi'akeser hu rak mivchinas Cyrus. The Arich Anpin, the Abba Yenek Mimazlo. We started off the whole beer. The Abba is Yenek from Mazel, and Mazel v'Neitzer, or Mazel Neitzer Cheser. He said, from there, that's where Chochma. And so we saw that's Ayin for Chitzonius. That's the way that Chochmas Timoa is a mocker to Chochma through this whole union of Yoinek Mimazlo. In other words, Yoinek Mimazlo is not Ishtalshus. The union for Niyonike, Derech Cyrus, is not Mamish Ishtalshus. So the Rebbe says that nonetheless we can include it in the general picture of Ishtalshus. And that's quite a beautiful here. And that's what he says. Well, that inyan from Chochma mi'akeser is also ishtalshus. Hagam, that's like a kasha b'toich inyan. The Kabbalas HaChochma mi'akeser rak mipchinas Cyrus. The Arichanpin, the Abba Yonim Mimazlo. Sha'Cyrus, hu rak moisrei moichin. U'mizeh levod nimshak b'chochma bina. V'loi, mi'akeser atzmoi mamish. Im kein ena kemoi me'achokma labina or me'abina lamidas. Sha'atzmis achokma nimshach mislavish ba'bina. V'chein me'bina la midas. In other words, they were now building the kasha, and that was what we said. It's like a kasha pnimit b'toich ha'biur. How can you say that Kabbalas HaChochma mi'akeser hagam, that we seem to be implying that that's also ishtalshus? How can you say that? Because l'chera de amshocha. Cyrus is only an inim for moiseri. Moiserim lavad, moiseris. Ve'ilu emasa hishtalshus is where one inim is mamish mashpia b'derech pnimi or mislavish in the tweede. Like we know that in Iliva Olu, the madrega elyoina, albeit alidei yerida, albeit alidei chitzonius shaboy, or beis mamish mislavish the madrega atachtoina. Ve'ilu in Cyrus we call it moiseris. Moiserei moichin lavad. And that's what goes into Chochma and Bamela into Bina. V'lo keser atzmai. When we say lo keser atzmai, not even a law b'china when the keser, how we use keser atzmai, no, only in from moiseres bilvat. So im kain ena k'mayim Chochma le Bina. It's not like normal ishtalshus. What in normal ishtalshus atzmai is a Chochma nimshach mislavish ba'bina v'chein mebina le midas. Shaharei. How do I know that Atzmi is a Chochma, Atzmi is a Bina, is Nimshach in the midas, but he is Bina and Saseichel Lui Leidas Amidas. Ki im al-idei is bonen as davke. Shekein hu b'midas tikun. That's how it is in midas tikun. In midas toyu, everything can fly around, you know how they call it. The famous expression is a toyo dikamench. So it could be ichaptir and ichaptir of a mitzadoil matikun, unless there's mamisha islabshus of moichin in the midas, ein Indian shall gilu hamidas how it should be. And an oifen from Amitius is galas of the midas. V'im kein hari b'midas yesh bohem min ha-seichel. In the Indian from midas, there's mamisha Indian from seichel, and then he's going to correct the Rabbi in the brackets that that's only a ha'ora, or it's a ha'ora atzmius. It's not a ha'ora like in the Indian of Cyrus. What there we call it moiseres. In other words, it's also moichin, but it's moiserei moichin. Albeit that the Indian from moichin had is in keser is moving it. That's moichin gedolim v'dakim b'yisa. Nonetheless, we call it moiseres bilvad. Now, what's Indian from moiseres? You know, moiseres is like Indian of leftovers. You know, ve'ilu michochma labina, or bina lamidas for sure. It's only a ha'ora is well known. What actually enters the midas is what we call a b'chein. But you can't call the b'chein moiseres bilvad. The b'chein is mamish agilui of the moichin b'kitzur. Or even shall tzimtzum that the midah should be able to hear what's my will for him, as you might say. The midah is able to chap what is the kivun, and we say a gateman. Because the midah is a balawachi there. The whole thing from the moichin is to touch them all. So remember, we touch them all for a day. A short message of a rosati amiti sinin from the whole noise of these bonanas. Mashichin moiserus is mashmil, it's just a sort of a leftover bilvad. But derech ha'avoida, it's one on the Indian from moiserei moichin. It can even fall into an Indian from chitzenius that a person can think that he's doing certain inyanim, and that his understanding and his chokhmah, well, that can be poil in the Indian of Gashmis and not Birchas Hashem. He thinks that it's Zayin chokhmah, Zayin how do you call it, Hamtzoes, that they are what bringing him the panos and such. But down that's Indian from moiseres bilvad. There's a nish emes moichin. Yeah, no, there's like a leftover from the moichin, which tell him that it was a trick, it was an idea, it was this, it was that, and there seems to be a certain connection between that and Meiser. For what? Because it's not really a dova amiti, it's a moichin, it's a min leftover. Therefore, there can be a toas, and he can be medamadat to a kesha with the ultimate shefa, and he can think that they have them as a kesha. Ve'ilu. The immediate shefa is a Birchas Havaya hitash here, and they had to be the eitzah meant it was a kli be'emta. And what was Vinsky is als besser, because too many kelim is not good. The famous beer from the Tzemach Tzedek in where is it? In Tiglachas Nozir, dort in Delmet. If you have too many kelim, too many ideas, it's like having a long bag. You fall, it gets in your way and you fall over. You trip over your own trousers, to use the expression. Yeah. And that's the Indian from moiserei moichin. I mean, too many ideas, too many chokhmah, too many things that they fall. In my middle, they can even lead you in a wrong. That's b'derech avodah. So cholila l'mayla from kesed to chokhmah, it's not cholila that's going to fall in the wrong direction. But inyanim what ein bohem gilui amiti is. Yeah, from the meaning from Kesser, since that's ain't safe, mamish and Azayu, so it gives rise to a new start with the senior from Chom. It looks like a new inning with the story how the moichin become mugbal in the form of an akuda with the whole inning from Chom and the ganze. Yeah, arich is well, that's a concept of moiseres. In other words, not a gilui pnimi and not a gilui atmi, but shaloi. Even that it's only chitonius, kimat ba'oiven sheyef shel ha'hakir as a pnimius. Well, that's even a leftover, a moiser. And remember, it's a very drastic drop. Mashenkin in the Indian from the koiches, from bina into midas, it's a Indian from b'chein, or be it a ha'ora, or be in them b'chein leaked b'goloi, the whole atzmi. So it's what we call a ha'ora. That's what he puts to break. That's what he makes at this point the tikkun. And so we'll see more about that as we go on. I have to ask your forgiveness. I've got to meet somebody in my office in a minute or two. So that's the inyan. We'll see as we go along here. But there's a inyan which comes mamish from pnimis atik into Ishtaris. And that's already a preparation for us. And if you get that far, that's really the Amshocha from the Yossi. As he steht dort in the Ramad. And we're going to see it's got to do with the Ketores. What's it talking about the inyan from Ketores? Ketores is a good Achechazak. The Rashbi, Chad Ketira. And here there's a very interesting Rashi. Take a look in last week's Siddur, Rashi by the Akedah. Rashi brings V'lech L'chol Eretz HaMoiriyo. Eretz HaMoiriyo. Rashi brings it. He brings it that's in from Yerushalayim. It's in Beis Hamikdash should be Yerushalayim. Yeah, and he brings Shemisham Teitza Heirua LeYisrael. The fat's called Moria. Onkelos Tirgem Moria al Shem HaKetoros. Keep it quick. The Onkelos Tirgem. Yeah, the Moria al Shem HaKetoros. Mi'ikrei. Thus in the Ketoros is Moya. So therefore the whole Ketoros is called al Shem Moya. Yerushalayim is Moria al Shem HaKetoros. Where you fought Russia, was fought on Jerusalem with Ketoros. Rashi says it's called, the whole thing is called al Shem HaKetoros. The ganze Beis Hamikdash is al Shem HaKetoros. And that's what he's going to talk about here. So he's going to get to this whole thing. The Amshocha Atzmi in the Stars is Ketoros. Good.